Hello students, you are welcome to AEA 547 Agricultural Risk Management class, topic 3. I believe you enjoy topic 2. Topic 3 will be very interesting and exciting, so stay put and listen. I am Dr. Helen, Inyang, your course facilitator. Thank you. Once again, we are on the lesson, the title topic 3. The title of the topic is meaning, sources, and types of risks in agriculture. Risk is a possibility of adversity or loss and refer to uncertainty that matters. Understanding risk is a starting point to help producers make good management choice in situations where adversity and loss are possible or possibility. Agricultural risk stems from different sources, which can be internal or external, human beings, farmers' family, or animals, natural occurrences, outbreak of pests and diseases, and action or inaction of government and neighboring farmers. On the basis of attitudes to risks, farmers can be classified into the following risk-taking categories: risk averters, risk neutral, risk taker, and risk tolerant. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define risks, explain the nature of agricultural risks, state the risks in crops and livestock industries, identify sources of agricultural risks, discuss the risks, the sources of risks and the implications on agricultural production, explain risks that are peculiar to agriculture, identify sources of each type of risks, differentiate between input and output risks, explain the consequences of risks in or on the farm production, highlight the effects of risk on investment on agricultural sector, discuss the effects of risks on welfare of farmers, explain the risk attitudes of farmers, state the determinants of risk attitude, discuss the implication on each categories of risk attitude on adoption of innovation. There are decisions that one should take. Decision making takes place in environments of imperfect knowledge of future or uncertainty and is associated with risk, which is usually defined as uncertainty of outcome resulting on loss is negatively affecting an individual. Before production takes place, the farmer must have made decision of what to produce and how to produce and what to produce and where to produce. And then this risk, when under a risky situation or uncertainty, the farmer will not know will be the outcome of it. But what he knows, he has taken decision and he has to cultivate. So agricultural risk is associated with negative outcomes that stems from imperfectly predictable biological, climatic, and price variables. These variables include natural adversity, example, pests and diseases, and climatic factors not within the control of the farmers. These also include adverse changes in both input and out prices. Risk in agriculture is not only concerned to individual farmers, but to the society as a whole, as risk-averse behavior of a farmer can lead to allocation of farm resources which is efficient, resulting in suboptimal overall allocation of resources and consequently lower the overall welfare of the farmers. For example, the risk-averse farmer may not adopt new productive productivity which will enhance enhancing technology because of potential risks associated with it. This will eventually result to lower increase in outputs than possible. So exposure to risks prevents farmers from easily plan ahead and make investment. In turn, risk inhibits external parties' willingness to invest in agricultural production because of the uncertainty about the expected return. That is all. Risks, many people are always afraid of investing in agri because of the risks involved in agriculture. Let's also consider in agriculture, we have to take just these two examples, maize marketing example. A maize farmer at harvest of his crops is faced with two options with respect to the sales of his harvest. He has to decide whether to sell the maize now at the current price or store them for sale in future. With the aim of selling the maize at higher price, the first option ensures returns to his harvest. But if he chooses the second option, he will incur storage costs. These are the losses due to storage. And not only that, he is also uncertain of the future price, which may fall or rise. If the price rises, he will make profits. The gain in question is a function of the difference between the current price and the future price. If, on the other hand, there is increase in the supply of maize in future, which results in fall in price and a significant loss from a decision to store rather than to sell, then you see that this risk is hinged on that fact that the farmer has no knowledge of what the future price will be at the time of decision making. Then the second one, the disease outbreak example. A farmer, a poultry farmer, may decide to vaccinate or not to vaccinate his broilers. There is a probability that there will be no outbreak of disease, and the farmer will have minimized its costs and therefore maximize its profits. But on the other hand, an outbreak of disease may result in wiping out the whole flock, and great will be the losses of the farmer. Sometimes, after observing all the necessary vaccination, the risk of losses due to the outbreak of disease might not be ruled out. This example underscores the importance of risk in agriculture. Indeed, risk and uncertainty are integral part of all walks of life. You can't do without it as far as agricultural production is concerned. You should also note that profit is a reward of risk bearing. Yes, those people that take the highest risks end up making unusual profits in most cases. So all things being equal, the higher the risk associated with an investment, the greater will be the expected income or profits. All things being equal. Let us also consider the risk is an unavoidable element in the business of agriculture. You can't do without it. It must surely come. Production can vary widely from year to year due to unforeseen weather and market conditions, causing wide variation in commodity prices. But risk, while inevitable, is often manageable. You can manage it, but you can't do without it. Farmers make decisions. The next one is that is another nature that farmer makes decisions in a risky or ever-changing environment. The consequences of this decision are generally not known when the decisions are made. An outcome may be better or worse than expected. Also, variability of price and yield are major sources of risk in agriculture. Changes in technology, legal and social concerns, and human factors itself also contribute to the risk environment for farmers. Then looking at this nature of agricultural risks, we can also have the following reduction underlying the nature of these risks. One of the reduction is that agricultural risk varies in its possible occurrence and outcome consequences. It varies. The consequence may be so severe, it may be less severe. Then the occurrence of agricultural risk and its outcome depends on chance. Yes, it may happen, it may not happen. That is, there is a probability that it will happen or it will not happen. That is 0 and 1. The risk characterized by is between 0 and 1. That is it, the probability. The risk characterized by uncertainty with respect to its occurrence and magnitudes of losses also. It's also the risk referred to uncertainty because it is inherently linked to uncertain or a chance of loss. Yes, you don't know because it links to uncertainty, the nature of the risk that will happen, whether it will be severe or less severe. The risk has been described as possibility that loss will be greater than normal, expected, or unusual. Those are the reductions underlying the nature of agriculture products. And this product also will take place under a decision environment. So let's look at the decision environment that risks are likely to take place or that the farmer will use in making their decisions. The environment under which decision may be made can be classified based on the availability of complete and accurate information and how perfectly the decision maker may predict the state of nature and the results of his decision. These categories are as follows. We have the uncertainty, risk, and uncertainty. Those are the conditions that the farmer will make his production condition, what to produce and how to produce and when to produce. So looking at the uncertainty, this is the state in which decision maker knows in advance the specific outcome of each alternative. It implies that all relevant parameters such as cost, capacity, demand, and so on have been or have known values. Also, under risky environments, this is the state of knowledge in which each of the alternative strategies leads to one of a set of specific outcomes, with each outcome occurring with probability that is known to the decision maker. You know, risk takes place under a known probability. Let us look at the uncertainty. This is a state in which one or more alternative strategy results in a set of possible specific outcomes which probability are either not known or not meaningful. Let's also look at the differences. We have seen the risky environment. The farmer can make decision under a certainty situation, under a risky situation, and under uncertainty situation. So let us also look at the differences between risk and uncertainty. Risk is the potential deviation between expected and real outcome, while uncertainty is the risk that takes place in an atmosphere of imperfect knowledge. The farmer do not know what will happen after planting. The risk is a situation where all possible outcomes are known for a given management decision, and the probability associated with each possible outcome is also known. While uncertainty, all possible outcomes are unknown. The probability of the outcome is also unknown, and the uncertainty cannot be managed. But in risky situations, risk can be managed. The third one here is that risk is a variability or outcomes which are measurable in an empirical or quantitative manner, while uncertainty is a future event which the parameters of probability distribution cannot be determined empirically. Risk is insurable. Yes, you can insure risk. That's why there are insurance companies all over. Uncertainty is not insurable. You can't insure it because you don't know what will happen. Risk is uncertainty that affects an individual welfare and is often associated with adversity and loss. While uncertainty is necessary for risk to occur, but uncertainty needs not lead to a risky situation. There's different sources of risk in agriculture. We have here natural hazards, market fluctuations, social uncertainty, and state action and wars. Then action and inaction of neighboring farmers. Let us consider them one after the other. When you talked about the action or the natural hazard, we are talking about the climatic factors. It is a well-known weather and its important production factors in agriculture. Yes, weather is important production. So unfortunately, these production factors can hardly be controlled. Weather risks are major sources of uncertainty in agriculture. We all know that. And it seems that fluctuation of temperature and precipitation, that is rain, even increased in the last decade due to global changes. We know we have been hearing about global changes. So many things change that affects agricultural production. So hydrometeorological risks such as drought, cyclone, floods, not only endanger human lives, properties, but also have devastating impacts on food production and farmers' livelihood system, and it affects their well-being. Farm communities that do not have inbuilt buffering mechanisms, as in resource-poor, rain-fed regions, are disappropriately vulnerable to severity of extreme climatic events. Also, climatic change further compounds the problem as it threatens to alter the frequency, severity, and complexity of climatic or climate events. Also, the vulnerability of the high-risk region in different parts of Nigeria. Drought. Excess rain is responsible for bad harvests all over the world. We know that when there is too much rain, it results to flood that wash away the plant nutrients. When there is drought, shortage of rain, it will also result to the plants not doing well because there is no water for them to absorb their nutrients from. Perhaps the most obvious impacts of weather risk on crops yield is on crops yield, but it is also relevant not to limit. It is not also limited to crop production. It also affects animals' performance. Also, the outbreak of pests and diseases in other natural hazards is another natural hazard that influences animal production. An outbreak of disease may wipe out the whole poultry farms and thereby cause a great loss to the farmers. Looking at the market fluctuation, the second one, fluctuation in market output, these are fluctuation in prices, is another source of risk in agricultural industry. The gestation period of crops, that is, period between planting and harvest, may be shortened or long. The price of a particular agricultural product may be very high at planting season, but at the time of harvest, the price often falls due to large supply. We know that. But the high price of the products will have propelled farmers to plant large acres of crops. Why? Because they think the price will continue like that, not knowing that other farmers will do the same thing. But during harvest, they discover that there is surplus in the market. This will automatically bring down the price. What is happening? This is market fluctuation. So the fall in the price will lead to reduction in the net farm income as well. Let us also look at the social uncertainty. This source of risk has to do with difference in control of resources. The resources in agricultural industries are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. Increase the earnings of these inputs or resources may attract resources into the other sector of economy at the expense of agricultural production. Taking, for example, industrial sectors where there is high demand for labor, increase in their wages. They will move over from agricultural sector to industrial sector so that they will earn high wages. Also, the land, when there is high demand for industrial products, then many people will now go into the production of industrial goods. As such, the land that's supposed to be used for arable crops will now be taken for, people will buy it and use it for industrial, to build industries for production. This will have a negative effect on output and farmers' income. Social actions, state actions, and wars. Wars and social actions have great risks in agricultural industry. Conflict is an ever-present risk and one of the most common causes of food insecurity. The displacement of people and the disruption of agricultural production and food distribution leave 10 millions of people at risk of hunger and famine. Also, food insecurity may lead to or exacerbate conflicts. That is ginger. There instill conflicts. The experience of Nigeria during the Civil War between 1963 and 70 is a good example of the effects of war on food farm businesses. You know, when there is war, no farmer will want to go out to farm because all of them will be afraid of not being killed, afraid of being killed. Action and inaction of neighboring farmers. Most people have families, business and personal goals. Typically, farmers will have some goals that will compete with one another and other that complement one another. So apart from family goals and actions, the pursuits of neighboring farmers can be at risk or can be a risk source to the farmers. In developing countries where small-scale farmers is prevalent, if a farmer is diligent, that is, one farmer is very diligent and keep his farm clean, the other person will not do that. So while the neighboring farmer is weedy and bushy, such neighboring farm will serve as an hideout for rodents and other animals that can wipe out the crops of a diligent farmer. You can see. So in risk management, farmers need to be aware of this interrelationship among goals and business enterprises. Then let us also look at the categories of risk in agriculture. Looking at farmer makes decision in a risky environment, which we know that ever-changing environments, the consequence of their decision are generally not known when the decisions are made. An outcome may be better or worse than expected. Then variability of prices and yield are major sources of risk in agriculture. Changes in technology too, legal and social concerns, and human factor itself also contribute to the risky environment for farmers. So risky situations of concern are typically those in which there is a high possibility of adverse consequences, or and the adverse consequences may result or should have they occur will cause significant disruption. So we are going to look at some of these risks here. The risks include the risks include here, these the types of risks include the production risks or yield risks. When we talk about production risks, that's the A or yield risks. Any production related activities or events that is uncertain is a production risk. So agricultural production implies an expected outcome or yield. Variability in outcome from those expected create risks to you, your ability to achieve financial goals. Production or yield risks occur because agriculture is affected by many uncontrollable events that are often related to weather. Weather condition is very one of them, including excessive or insufficient rainfall, extreme temperature, health, insects, and diseases. Any production resulted activity or event that is uncertainty is production risk. So agricultural production implies an an unexpected or expected outcomes or yield. Variability in outcomes from those expected creates risks to your ability to achieve financial goals. Technology plays another important role in risk production risk to farmers. That sometimes rapid introduction, introduction of crops, varieties, and production techniques often offer potential to improve efficiency, but may at times yield poor results. Because why? Because most of these farmers do not really know how to handle them. So improvement in technology sometimes also will result to obsolescence, where the farmers, where that if they are not being exposed to the use of all these equipment, may not be able to perform very well. Okay, let us also look at the market or price risks. When we are talking about the price and market risks, it has to include input price risks as well as output price risks. So price risk reflects risks associated with changes in price of output or of inputs that may occur after commitment to production has begun. Because that is once the farmer starts producing, this is where all these things set in. The inputs price may increase, and then as a result, after harvesting, the output will fall, price will fall. So in agriculture, production generally is a lengthy process. Livestock production, for example, typically requires an ongoing investment in feed and equipment that may produce return for several months or years. Both inputs and output prices volatility are important sources of market risk in agriculture. Prices of are extremely uh, agricultural commodities are extremely volatile. Output prices variability also originates from both endogenous as well as exogenous, that is both internal and external market shocks. Segmented agricultural markets will be influenced mainly by local supply and demand conditions, while more global integrated market will also be significantly affected by international production. It has local market as well as all those things depends what they need. So in local markets, price risk is sometimes mitigated by natural age as ordinary effects, in which an increase or decreased revenue or demand in annual production tend to decrease or increase in output price. So that necessary farmers' revenue, which also will lead to either increase or decrease in farmers' revenue. When we are talking about market risk in integrated markets, the reduction in the price is generally not correlated with local supply conditions, and therefore price shock may affect producers in a most significant way. Another type of market risk or kind of market risk arises in process of delivering production to the marketplace, especially in local markets. There are some of the production areas are in rural, remote area where these farmers may not be able to access the local market to sell their produce. As a result, those things will get rotten in the market. And those that have been able to take to the market, because there are not so many there, then the price either will increase. But if they are able to take everything to the market, sometimes when there is increase in supply of that commodity, there will be fall in price as well. That's the law of demand and supply. So the lack of infrastructure of well-developed market makes this a significant source of risk in many developing countries, like I said. So market risks can further be classified into input risks and output risks, like I said. When we are talking about input risks here, in crop agriculture, input risk has been considered to be substantial than the output risks or yield risks. It does not translate into returns variability of some magnitude. Moreover, the input risks, as the name implies, as moreover time windows of these input risks is shorter. Taking for example, fertilizer and input costs are usually incurred within few months of the onset of production. So whereas the uncertainty around output risks and yield usually remain for at least 6 months. Also, the magnitude of input risk fluctuation can be significant, and there is no system in place to hedge against input risks. You cannot hedge against input risks. Although there is a possibility of storing some items on the farm. And yes, those items that you think you'll be able to store for a certain period, maybe for the next farming season, like fertilizer can stay for maybe 2-3 years without losing its value. You can store it and then use it later. So input risk is still significant and may be overlooked in most cases, especially when you have a bumper harvest. Then let's also look at the output risks. The output risks arise due to the biological lag inherent in agricultural production. Producers may make production decisions months or even years for 3 crops before they have a product to sell. Yes, those that are embarked on a 3 crops production. 3 crops, taking for example the citrus plantation, those are oil palm production, those ones, it takes many years before they are ready for sale or due for harvest. So before the actual crops are known, during this period, the output price may change dramatically in response to shock in supply and demand. So this may put farmers in a difficult situation of if commodities price decrease drastically during the production and marketing cycles. Also, many factors are also responsible for price changes. These factors include income and population growth. With increase in income, many people want to buy those things that they were not buying for most of their agricultural products. And also, increase in population will also result to increase in the price of, because there will be high demand, increase in the price of agricultural production. So at the time, productivity and output growth have been impaired by natural resources or constraints. Underinvestment in rural infrastructure and agricultural science. Farmers' limited access to agricultural inputs and weather disruption. This also will result in price changes, input price or output price changes. When there is no, maybe the production is not much, there is need, there will be output, increase in the output prices. But when there is surplus or increase in the production of that product that results in surplus of this produce in the market, there will be fall in the output prices. Also speculation. Speculation has been mentioned as a driver of price increase. That's when people hear, next year there will be scarcity of this food, and as of such, there will be increase in price. You see people trooping into the market to buy a particular product, just to store for tomorrow, for fear of increase in price. This, when there is high demand, there is automatically the price of that product will increase, and then that is the market demand. Then let's look at the institutional or regulatory change or risks. Institutional risks result from changes in policies and regulation that affects agriculture. This type of risk is generally manifested as anticipated production constraints or price changes for inputs. That is the regulatory risk or for output. For example, change in government rules regarding the use of pesticides, as for crops or drugs for livestock, may alter the cost of production, or a foreign country decision to limit imports of certain crops may reduce that crop's price. Yes, when there is the crops, especially the crops that for its exports, when that foreign country say that used to maybe you import those crops or produce, say, we no longer need this produce again. You see that since they don't have outlets for exports, it will flood the local market. Automatically, the price will come down. Other institutional may arise from changes in policies, government policies affecting disposal of animal manure, restriction in conservation practice or land use, or changes in income tax policy or credit policy. All this will have a great impact on our outputs or agricultural products that results in price changes, output or input price changes. Human or personal risks. Farmers are also subject to human or personal risks that are concerned to all businesses operators. Disruptive changes may result from such events as death, divorce, injury, or poor health of a principal, a principal in the farm, that is the owner of the farm, or a manager of that farm. So in addition to this, the changing objectives of individuals involved in the farming enterprise may have significant effects on long-run performance of the operation. Let us also consider the assets risk. This is also common to all businesses and involves theft, fire, or other losses or damage to equipment, buildings, and livestock. No, all those things are assets. Even crops are also assets to the farm. So a type of risk that appears to be of growing importance is contracting risk, which involves opportunistic behavior, and the reliability of contracting partners. Taking for example, the partners will say, okay, I will give you before at the commencement of production or before the commencement of production. The farmer said, the contractor will say, okay, I will give you so amounts of production for you to enable you produce your crops. And then after the production, you sell it at a certain price for me. And then he has already committed that money to the assets, your asset, the crop you intend to produce. And then at a long run, there was a change in weather which result to excessive rainfall that results to flood that consume the old crops. And then the contractor will be at the receiving end. In other way, then the contractor also will still do the same thing. And then there is an increase in the price of products. The contractor says, okay, I'll give you money. You buy, do this thing, and then you will sell it at certain amounts for me. And then when there is increase in the price of that product, you can't do anything. You have to sell it at the price you people have already bargained for. That is it. That is the risk involved in assets risk. Then let's also consider the financial risk. The last but not the least, the financial risk. Financial risk results from the way the firm capital is obtained and financed. A farmer may be subject to fluctuation in interest rates on borrowed capital. That's if the capital he borrows to produce is from either loan or anywhere, or fresh cash flows difficulties. If there is an insufficient fund to repay creditors, he will sell his assets. The use of borrowed fund means that a share of return from the business must be allocated to meeting debt payments. Then if there is a problem and then he has not been able to meet these obligations, he may end up selling his assets. So even when the farm is 100% owned finance, that is owner's finance, the operating capital is still exposed to probability of losing equity or net worth. So this is where decision, financial or decisions is very, very important. Let us also look at, apart from these types of risks, there are of risks. These classes of risks are normal risks, we have them here, normal risks, catastrophic risks, and idiosyncratic risks and systematic risks. Let us look at them one after the other. The normal risks. Risks associated with frequent events which do not change or cause large losses are known as normal risks. This type of risk includes normal fluctuation in prices and production. Normal risks are managed on the farm and by general government policies. Then we look at the second one as the catastrophic risks. These risks are risks that consume so much. It is a risk. Events which occur infrequently is it's not always common, but leads to severe damage to the whole region. Example, floods, drought, pests, disease outbreaks. These are regions that typically fall under the catastrophic risk layers, for which market solutions have played a less important role here. So these rules mostly due to high public involvement. In developing countries, financial market and insurance provide solutions to catastrophic risks. While in Nigeria, that is a developed country, the state federal government provides relief to affected farmers. Taking, for example, the flood about 2 years ago, the government were able to give them a relief package to farmers, at least to help them and then settle them in a particular place, at least to ease their problem, relieve them. Also, National Disaster Relief Agency also contributes immensely to relieve these people of this catastrophe risks. Then another risk here is, the third one is idiosyncratic risks, syncretic risks, and systematic risks. Risks that affect few farmers or few farms are known as idiosyncratic synthetic risks, while systematic risks affect large farmers. Example of idiosyncratic risks are illness of farmers or laborers, acidic soil, particular plant and animal pests and diseases. Risks affecting the big population at the same time is drought, that is systematic risks, drought or flood or price shock are more difficult to manage inside the sector. Effects of risks on agricultural industry. So the presence of risks in agriculture influences farm production and investment choice in a number of ways. This includes the choice the farmer makes for a specific mix of commodities that is they produce and inputs used to produce these commodities. That is what affects them. The next one is strategic to manage and cope with these risks. The third one is dynamic or investment impacts when the resolution of uncertainty results in a negative impact of on the farm income. So those are the end results of the effects of these risks. Then we look at the nature. Looking at this, the nature of the phase two of this impact on the farm will depend principally on the attitude, that is the nature of the choice of the farmers and the strategy to manage. That is, will depend on the attitude of farmers towards risks. In general, farmers may be risk averse. They run away from, they don't want it. They dislike risky outcomes. Some of them may be risk loving, prefer risky outcomes. Some of them may be risk neutral. But studies within the agricultural sector have found that farmers tend to advance, they run away from risks, preferring the outcomes that are most certain. Although larger farms are relatively less risk averse, commercial farms, mechanized farms do not really run away from risks. Let us look at the effects of risks on production. Effects of risks on agricultural industry. We are looking at the effects on production. The first one here is the effects on production. So of all the risk categories discussed so far, price and production risk tends to influence farm production decision most directly. So in the absence of the instruments for managing risks, economic analysis of production under uncertainty often suggests that farmers will base their choice in some expected outcome, that is the yield, expected yield or prices. So to the risk adverse producers will tend to prefer low risk. They don't want to low risk, and as such the outcome will be low returns or low outcomes, and which will not give them a higher payoff. So in practice, this means that producers may choose lower risk production technologies and low risk crops at the expense of innovation and risky choice that potentially offer them higher outcome or returns or yields. So this will generally lead to lower average income and lower level of economic efficiency to the farmers, and also vice versa. Let us also consider the on-farm risk management strategy and efficiency. There are several mechanisms for reducing or managing risks However, agricultural producers may implement the on-farm strategy to manage their risks. This entails diversification of farm businesses. Farm business income is one of the on-farm strategy for risk management. Diversification of this type redirects investment and labor time away from the farm towards off-farm activities, especially those generating income not strongly correlated with on-farm businesses income. To the extent that such diversification will compete for resources, example, labor time and capital with agricultural production, and it may reduce agricultural production or capacity. Diversification can also occur at the farm business level. We are looking at the off-farm and on-farm diversification. Now, diversification can also occur at farm business level. In this case, rather than specializing in enterprise that gives the highest rate of return, the farm business is diversified to include other enterprises where returns are not positively correlated or are less risky. This will result in lower average income and lower economic efficiency as resources are not directed towards the most profitable farm enterprises. That is it. If they diversify and they use other things that will not really give them more returns. So in the face of increasing trade liberalization, farmers may experience conflicting pressure arising from the needs to specialize activities in order to exploit production efficiency and maintain competitiveness while ensuring that risk exposure is minimized through on and off farm diversification. So where risks can be managed efficiently and effectively through market-based risk management, business will be more able to specialize while mitigating the level of risk first. Then let's also look at the impacts of risks on investment. So while there are several risk management options available to farmers, these options only provide potential production for potential losses. Where the remaining risk exposure causes returns and farm income to vary, this variation is uncertain. It can make it difficult for farmers or farm businesses to plan long-term investment. Taking, for example, the volatility in output prices can make it more difficult for farmers to identify trends in prices, which is often a basis for making long-term investment decisions. In the presence of such volatilities, the level of investment by risk-averse producers is likely to be lower than the risk-free environment, like those ones that want to run away with risk. So their level of investment will be lower than is expected, which in turn has a negative impact on long-term productive capacity in agriculture. No, most of them, those risk-averse people, will not want to embark on a long-term investment. Why? Because they don't like anything lost. In addition, where unexpected shock results in significant income losses, this can constrain future farm investment. This is largely a product of insufficient credit markets. Otherwise, farm business should be able to borrow to smooth their income for any fluctuation. because many people do not really want to use, maybe lend out their money for agricultural production because of the nature, the characteristics of agricultural products that is highly characterized by risk. So the impacts of risk on investment described above accounts for how level of input use, outputs and investment in agriculture may fall below optimal level in the production environment characterized by risk or uncertainty. Then effects of risk on welfare of producers. Risks also have a negative effect on the welfare of producers. So under the situation of market, isolated markets, there is a negative correlation between the individual's own production and market prices. The expected profits will be lower under uncertainty than a certainty environment. This is because the year of bumper harvest for an individual farmer corresponds with the year of bumper harvest for most other farmers, therefore resulting in a fall in the local market prices. Because once there is bumper harvest, there will be that produce will be surplus in the market. As such, will bring down the price because all the farmers, the producers, will want to make sure that they sell everything within a short period of time. Since most of the agricultural products are highly perishable, they want to sell them and then go instead of allowing them to be wasted completely. So since the producers receive a low price, whether the output is high and higher, and a higher price will also when output is low. Yes. For average production, the farmer receives a price lower than average prices in most cases. This implies that risks affects even the welfare of risk-neutral farmers. So farm households can raise their agricultural products, earning and productivity by increasing land under cultivation, applying more purchase inputs, hire more labor and equipment, switching from subsistence to higher value cash crops by selling a greater proportion of crop yields. This method, however, exposes them to more risks since outputs or market prices may fall below expected level. So the farm household decision in such a situation will depend on its assessment of risks involved and its capacity to withstand the losses should the outcome turn out to be bad. Like if they are making a good decision, well, they will smile. But if bad decisions, they will be the one that will bear this risk. So having this, also look at the categories of risks of these farmers, attitude of farmers. We have here the risk averters, the risk neutral, the risk seeker, risk tolerant. So we are going to discuss them one after the other. So looking at them, we'll take the risk averters. Those people that are always running away from risks. They don't want to take risks. So the risk averters are the risk avoiders. These are those individuals who have attitude of taking appropriate measure to avoid or incur any risk or the outcome of risky events. So risk averse people are not comfortable with risks. Yes, they don't want. They are willing to avoid the risks once identified rather than taking them. They run away from it. They are afraid of taking risks. So the risk averse implies that an individual is not willing to take excess of the expected returns in exchange for some uncertainty about the future that they don't know. For instance, risk averse people will not respond positively to new innovation. They won't, such as new varieties of crops, herbicides, or any other agrochemicals. Such farmers will delay adoption. They won't adopt those new innovation until they have seen the probability of such risky taking by neighboring farmers. Once they see others, I didn't know that this thing is good like that. Okay, I will follow you. And this type of people are usually regarded as laggards. They are laggards in adoption of innovations. Let us also look at the risk neutral people. Risk natural. Risk natural people manage risk based on their expected value. That is the probability time impacts. Besides, their decision towards risk are not biased by any other factors except for risk expected value. What they are biased is expected value, the outcome, the output. A person that is only willing to pay the average loss as premium is regarded as a risk neutral. They pay premium. That is, they have to insure their crops, their animals. So the risk neutral people are always known as calculators. So calculators understand that they must take some choice or some chances to get ahead. But they recognize that there are degrees of risk in every situation. So before making any decision or taking action, they gather information and analyze this information and analyze the pros and cons, the odds, the disadvantages before they embark on it. Calculators try to be realistic, recognize the risks, try to reduce it to acceptable level. They know that is why they will always want to ensure their crops and as well as their animals. So most farmers are calculators in their decision taking. It means that such farmers are not ready to assume risks and at the same time not prepared to take more than necessary in preventing risks. They don't want to spend so much in preventing it and they don't want to assume it or transferring the loss to another insurance company. So what they do, the issue is that what makes one to be more risk averse than another? That is what they think. This issue borders on the realm of psychology or sociology or anthropology. Nevertheless, it can assume that factors such as family and social influences, genetics, religious and psychological or physiological beliefs all play an important role in this case. So looking at the risk seekers. Risk seekers. Risk seekers people see risk as a challenge, yes, so, and feel exciting dealing with them. A farmer or a farm manager who accepts risks as less than expected average losses, perhaps even paying to at risk, is a risk seeker. They are known as adventurers. Adventurers are individuals who enjoy risks. So adventurers, risks are challenging and exciting. Often, adventurers look for the chance to take risks. Adventurers differ in their mental outlook. Some risk takers enjoy the excitement of risk taking, but keep the stakes to a reasonable level. Many survival is not safe. Many farmers may be in these categories with respect to their marketing plans. They will take that risk. While the risk is undergoing, they are taking it, they will also diversify ways in which they will be able to channel their produce, their products after harvesting. They make sure that they have a first-hand information of the market, of what they are expected, and where the avenues, the market outlets, where they will distribute their products as soon as they are due for harvesting. So many speculators are these categories. Some adventurers may get in other heads, over their heads. This may be from peer pressures or from changes in external, because some of them will do this because of peer pressures. Their friends have done it. Okay, let me try it, and and things like that. They take that risk, and then at the end of it, some of them, but majority of them, come out very strong, come out making a huge profit. So let us look at the risk tolerance. Risk tolerance people are indifferent about risks. I don't care. This means that they do not pay much attention to risks until these risks become real problems to them. So the level of comfort of these categories of farmers to risk is very near the line of zero. Taking, for example, somebody that is cultivating on a flood-prone area. Despite the warning, despite everything, there are no problem. Don't have been doing it before, and then they don't care. It won't come. But once the floods coming now, that is when they realize it. Sometimes it's always very late for them, too late for them. So, and sometimes they do that and nothing comes, and they make a profit from it, a huge harvest, a high yield. But sometimes it comes, it happens to them, which will result to a greater loss. Having looked at this farmers, let us also consider the farmers' risk, as that is the determinants of this farmers' risk attitudes. One of the first determinants here is the age of the farmer. Age was found to be inversely related to risk advanced attitudes. This implies that the lower the age of the farmer, the more risk advanced he or she will be. That means the older farmers are more likely to have accumulated more wealth than younger ones. Also, older farmers are more likely to have greater social capitals and incentives, which can serve as some form of traditional insurance or fallback strategies in the process of decision making. That is why older people take more risks than the young ones, because they have what it takes, something to fall back to in case they experience losses. Household size. The larger the household size, the greater will be the total consumption needs of the farm family, and hence, the more risk-averse behavior a farmer will put on. That is it. The little I have, I don't want to know. I can't take it. So that if I take it, what will I use in feeding my family? This implies that household size tend to reduce the probability of risk neutrality in spite of the large family size. Studies have revealed a negative relationship between the household size and risk advanced attitudes. This implies that the majority of households might get household members assisting on the farm by supplementing its labor supply, especially during back periods, as weeding and harvest time. They will now go into it because the families are there. They won't pay money. They use family labors for cultivation. They can also maybe take a certain risks, but not all. Educational status too. So the willingness, that is this educational status also. The willingness of the farmer to take risks tend to increase with increase in the level of education. Those, because these people have the technical know-how of how to use the improved technologies, new innovations in order to maximize their output. In other words, education increases the risk neutrality of farmers and reduce the risk aversion. Yes, the positive correlation between the education status of the farmers and the willingness to bear risk is based on the knowledge acquisition, which helps such farmers to undertake the nature of risks and various technological technologies available to mitigate or cope with risks. Access to credit. Access to credit is also inversely related to risk attitudes. This implies that the more credit support given to the farmers, the less risk averse the farmers will be. Because they have enough money, they can take risks. They can embrace the new system of farming. improve or new innovations. Then family and farm family income. Family and farm income also is another determinant of risk attitudes of the farmers. Financial status of the food crops farmers, all things being equal, has positive and significant relationship with risk averse attitude of the food crops farmers. This stands to reason that the lower the household income, the poorer the household. So the more risk averse will they be. You know, they can't take risk with the little what they have, the little resources they have. Hence, other things being equal, household whose income falls below poverty line will be less willing to take risks than those whose income are higher. The modes of land acquisition, how they got their land. So, as the name implies, land can be acquired by inheritance, purchase, and lend to. So, the most common modes of land acquisition by farmers in developing countries is through inheritance. So, this mode of land acquisition through inheritance increases the probability of risk taking of the respondent. You know, first one, let me try it. After all, the land, I did not buy it, or I did not rent this land. So it is my own land and inherited it from my grandfather. Let me embark on this risk, or let me embrace this new technology and see. So since the land is not purchased, the farmer can afford to use his security or guarantee for any risky transaction. Total investment, that's another determinant. Farm total investment is one of the factors that determine the willingness of the farmer to bear risks. Capital accumulation and increase in farm assets of the farmers attracts higher risks. Those that have enough assets, they attract higher risks. Hence, farmers must indulge in certain risk enterprise. In such circumstances, risk-taking attitude is a neutral test. The risk-bearing ability is directly related to solvency and the liquidity of the financial position. That is, the higher the net worth of the farm or the farm, the greater the ability of such farm to bear more risk. Let us look at the members of the cooperative society membership. Membership of cooperative society gives farmer access to credits at low interest rates, but it is therefore expected that membership of this society should increase their risk-taking ability. It is thought that when farmers associate with members in similar social and economic status, the knowledge base for dealing with the risks associated would be agricultural production environment. That is, it will enhance them to increase more in the agricultural production. Such it will also enhance risk-taking ability. But we will discover that it may shock you to discover that it has contrary is that because it has been the case that it has been the case. This might be due to the fear because so many of them will not want to. This might be due to the fear of investing acquired loan in a risky enterprise, which may make them to default payment. That is just their fear, and thereby losing their integrity. They don't want to lose that self-respect. That's why when they receive this loan, instead of maybe going into a risky agricultural production, they will divert it to do other things so that they will be able to pay, so that they will not lose integrity. In conclusion, agricultural production, unlike other enterprises in other sectors of economy, undergo biological process which made it dependent on factors which are not under control, of farmers, thereby subjecting farmers to innumerable risks. We have also learned about the nature of agricultural products and the implications on transportation, and other demands and supply. We have also learned about the sources of agricultural risks, kinds of the risk attitudes of these farmers. So in a summary, we have learned about the meaning of risks, example of risks, agricultural risks, nature of agricultural risks, decision-making environments, risks also versus uncertainty, financial risks, and others. Different types of risks we have considered them. The risk attitudes of farmers also we have looked at kinds of risk attitudes. So an assignment here for you, state and explain. We'll discuss this when we are coming for live class facilitation. State and explain 6 determinants of risk attitudes of farmers. We shall continue from facilitation. Thank you.